الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلاة ربي وسلامه ورحمته وبركاته على ذاك النبي الكريم نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, we continue 7:40 p.m. Friday, September the 20th, 2019, which agrees with the Hijri calendar, the night of the 21st of Shahr Allah al-Muharram, 21 Shahr Allah al-Muharram. As we continue in this month of Muharram, which is now the 21st night of Muharram, the year 1441 after the Hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wassalam. As we started in this tremendous chapter, which in regards to what they call Bab Ma Ja'a fi Sihr, the chapter which comes in clarifying magic. And we talked about the meaning linguistically and also in the Kitaab and Sunnah. With the meaning of the word sihr, the meaning of the word sihr, and also its correlation to why the great Imam put it in the book in the first place. As we'll cover in this chapter, brothers and sisters, how sihr is of different types, different forms, and sihr can even be from speech. The sihr can even be from speech, from one embellishing or beautifying one's speech to the point it's as if it becomes magical, where the people gravitate towards it and they become deluded by it or fooled by it, due to the high level of fasaha, of eloquence that one possesses, where the Prophet ﷺ even mentioned this. All this we're going to cover, don't worry. Where he said, alayhi salatu wassalam, inna min al-bayan the sihra. Vary from clarification is magic. And definitely in speaking and clarification, verily in it is magic. We'll talk about that inshallah, that hadith, because that's going to come. Then you have a affair that can, it's going to talk about inshallah, that is not at the level of magic, but the effect of it is magic. Or it could be worse, such as namima. As we'll talk about inshallah. It's not magic in its essence, but the effect of it can be and lead towards worse, or the consequences could be worse than magic. As we'll talk about inshallah. So in regards to magic, we talked about that magic breaks down to two types. We have magic, as we discussed last class, which is what, everyone? We have magic, which is done by the way of the shayateen, which is done by the shayateen, as we discussed of the class. The magic that is done by the way of the shayateen, or as they say, an tariq al-shayateen, that is the worst form of magic. Where as a result of it, one leaves the fold of Islam. If he utilizes the shayateen to do his dirty work, to harm an individual by utilizing them, because we know, in order for a person to attain that level where the shayateen service one, know for sure that he or she fell into some deep level of disbelief, in order, as a result of it, that the shayateen would service anyone. And we'll talk about, like we said, the different types, what the shayateen love of the human being to commit in order for them to service one. For example, one doing acts of disbelief, such as I gave examples from the Quran, throwing it in the garbage can, or throwing it in the toilet, or doing acts of disbelief, such as polytheism, or even worship of the shaitan himself, or utilizing animal blood, smearing it on the walls, writing weird types of writing with it. All these are various acts that the shaitan loves, and as a result of it, he'll service one if one does it. We'll talk about all this inshallah when it comes. All these different type of things that I'm sure some of us have observed. We've seen with our own eyes the different types of weird things that people what? We're acting things that people do and say to draw close to the shaitan. All that's going to come inshallah. So we said the first type is what? Which is the worst type or the worst form, which is what everyone? The use of the shayateen. If one utilizes the shayateen, is left of hold of Islam, and that is considered kufr akbar. That will remove you from the fold of Islam. Due to the fact that we'll talk about the ayahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 103 or 104, I think it's both, 103 and 104, Surah Al-Baqarah, what he says, Allah tabarak wa ta'ala talked about وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتُلُ الشَّيَاطِينَ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانُ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ. That Sulaiman did not disbelieve. However, the shayateen kafaru. The shayateen disbelieved. They taught the people magic. وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى مَلَكَيْنِ بِبَابِلَ هَارُوتَ وَمَارُوتَ وَمَا يُعَلِّمَانِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ حَتَّى يَقُولَا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ فِتْنَةٌ فَلَا تَكْفُرْ فَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مِنْهُمَا مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ وما هم بضارين به من أحد إلا بإذن الله فيتعلمون ما يضرهم ولا ينفعهم ولقد علموا لمن اشتراه ما له في الآخرة من خلاق. So it's two parts in the ayah that clearly shows that person falls in the kufr. It says Sulaiman, the great prophet, عليه وعلى نبينا أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم, that Sulaiman did not disbelieve. However, the shayateen kafaru, they disbelieved. We'll talk about the meaning of the ayat. The ayat is kind of, the tafsir of it is very long. And Ibn Kathir, even though Imam As-Sa'di gave a more concise statement about it, you'll find there's different aqwal in regards to this ayat, which is going to come inshallah. That ayat is in the chapter. But anyway, the first part of the ayat says the shayateen disbelieve. They were teaching people magic. And at the end of the ayah, if you look in the mushaf, because it's not in your book, it says, وَلَقَدْ عَلِمُوا لَمَنْ اشْتَرَى. The ayah was actually concerning the Yahud, as we'll talk about. If you notice in the chapter prior, how the great Imam Sheikh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab connected everything together. It was like in a sequence in Kitaab At-Tawheed. Notice in the chapter of what we covered previously, it talked about the Yahud. Right, everyone? And notice in the ayah, in the chapter before, then it talk about how they believed in Egypt. Didn't we talk about that? If you look in the chapter before, it says that the Yahud yu'minuna bil jibti wa taghut. That they believe in Egypt and they believed in the taghut. For that was from the ways of the people of the book, especially the Jews, that they used to partake in magic heavily. They used to heavily indulge in magic. As we covered last class, not our last class, last chapter. Right, everyone? We talked about the meaning of Egypt, that one of the meanings is sihr, magic. Also, what is mentioned in the same chapters is this ayat again. But however, this ayat, which we're going to talk about inshallah, which the great Imam inaugurated his chapter with, is talking about the Jews here. How they used to partake in magic. So the ayah talking about Sulaiman was talking about the Jews. Right, everyone? And he said about them that from their tests, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have revealed upon the two angels Harut wa Marut, who was in the city called Babil. Babil was in the Iraq. It was in Iraq. It was in Iraq. It was in Iraq. Some of the tafasir says, of course, Kufa. And we know Kufa is where, everyone? It's in Iraq. It's in Iraq. Type. As it was revealed to the two angels, Harut wa Marut. Type. Some details in this regard, I'm not going to touch on now because it's a little long. We'll get to it, inshallah. But the two angels said to them, do not learn from us magic until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it a test for Bani Israel, for the Jews, by those two angels told them do not learn sihr. And it says in the ayat that they told them as a test, La takfur. By you learning magic, know for sure you're going to disbelieve. As it says clearly in the ayah. It says, وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى مَلَكَيْنِ بِبَابِ عَلَى هَارُوتَ وَمَارُوتَ وَمَا يُعَلِّمَانِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ حَتَّى يَقُولَا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ فِتْنَةٌ فَلَا تَكْفُرْ. So the shayateen disbelieved by teaching people magic. And the two angels who came for Harut and Marut clearly said to them, we are a test for you. Do not disbelieve. Do not disbelieve. Verily we're a test. We're innama nahnu fitna. Fala takfur. That's what we'll talk about inshallah. Notice it said in the ayah, from the effects of magic, what we covered last class, and they learn from them that which separates between a husband and a wife. ما يفرقون به بين المرء وزوجه. What will separate between two spouses, or the husband and the wife. That's from the effects of what, everyone? Of magic. As we talked about also, that magic is called sarf al-atf. Sarf, meaning it can make one go away and not desire his spouse or her spouse anymore. Well, they will not desire them. And they will leave them off and not want to be what? In love with them anymore, or hate them. Or it could be the opposite. It can make one fall deeply in love until they become obsessed, until it goes beyond that, where they can even become insanely in love with a person. So it has the opposite effect. Where it can make one leave where they do not desire, make one undesirable in his or her eyes anymore. They will leave them, not want to be with them. Or it could be the opposite effect, where it could cause ishq. It could cause obsession to the point where it can drive a person insane. And we know that magic, like we said, can also lead to one totally losing their mind and kill them. It can happen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and that from you. Protect you and us and all of us from that. طيب. فَيَا مَعَشَ الْإِخْوَةِ, we was talking about in last class, the first type that will nullify Islam is the usage of the shayateen. The second type, we said, which is called udwan al-fisq, which is, you will find that Ahl Ilm called it transgression in sin, which is a major sin, where one uses a concoctant of or a formula, or they make it in the form of a liquid. They make it in the form of a liquid. That was the second we mentioned, right or wrong, Abdullah? That was the second type we mentioned. You'll find that Ahl Ilm mention and say that this, even though some of them still say that they, or this person falls into kufr, but you'll find that a lot of them say that it's considered from the major sins, but not necessarily if one practices it, that they left the fold of Islam. But it's a major sin. And whether or not a person uses the first one or the second one, he still can be killed. We'll talk about that inshallah in a couple of minutes. For first one could be killed riddatan, and another one could be killed haddan. As we'll talk about the difference between the two. The difference between man qutila riddatan wa man qutila haddan. What is the difference between the two? We'll talk about that in a second inshallah. طيب. At any rate, those were the two types that we mentioned. There's other type in which we'll talk about, but that was what we started the chapter off with the other class, right? We said the usage of the shayateen, and then you have the what? The second, which is the usage of what they call adwiya wa aqaqir, liquids and concoctants that are made, some type of formula or liquid, or some type of form of medicine, or what have you. So you'll find that some of them say that what? As we'll discuss inshallah, that person, they don't say that necessarily left the fold of Islam, but they fell into a major sin, rather from the sab'a al-mubiqat, from the 7 great destructive sins that we'll talk about inshallah. طيب. We also said from its effects from last class, what did we say, everyone? That you have what they call sarf and what? Ataf. Sarf and ataf. That was from the last class. You have which is called sarf. Sarf means that it removes or takes one away from his or her spouse, making or rendering them undesirable. You'll find that one spouse does not desire the other anymore. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions clearly in His book in Surah Al-Baqarah. What does it say, everyone? فَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مِنْهُمَا إِيش مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. That they learn from them, meaning those two angels who are Harut and Marut, what separates between a man and his wife, making one of the two what? Undesirable in the eyes of the other. So that's one of the effects of what? Magic. Right or wrong? طيب. Also, like we said, magic can render one to be, or fall into the level what they call ishq, where one becomes obsessed or obsession, or one falls deeply in love with a person until they reach the level of insanity. And I've heard stories like this before, where a man or a woman becomes obsessed with a man, or a man becomes obsessed with a woman, where he says, all I see is her, all I can think about is her. All I can think about, that's it. That's all I can think about every time I turn. All I think about is her. That's obsession. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? And it can reach the level of insanity. It can reach the level of sihr, can drive one insane if one is not careful. طيب. We also talked about how magic, we said this before, how magic is real. How magic is real. It's not folklore, it's not superstition, it's not a myth, it's real. And it has the ability to affect one individual. However, it can affect one, it only can affect one by the permission of Allah. Bi-idnillah al-kawni. By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission in this existence. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Because we know that Allah wa ta'ala, His idhn, His permission breaks down to two types. Number one is the permission of Allah in this existence of what He allows to happen of good and evil. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of all of it. He allows it to happen out of some infinite wisdom and complete wisdom that He knows and we do not know. So He allow magic to afflict one or afflict an individual. طيب, the first type, I'll say it again. The first permission of Allah is idnullah al-kawni, the permission of Allah in this existence, where Allah allows and gives permission for good and evil to happen for a reason. Is it clear what I'm saying? I'll say it again. The permission of Allah breaks down to two types. The first permission of Allah is idnullah al-kawni, the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this existence, where good and evil has to take place, and Allah allows it to happen due to some hikmah, due to some wisdom that Allah knows and we do not know. And from that evil is what, everyone? Sihr, magic. Isn't that evil? And certain people are affected by it. That's also another evil of what we perceive to be evil. But we know that evil is not ascribed to Allah. Evil is not ascribed to Allah. But based upon what we perceive, the creation perceives these affairs as being either good or evil. Even though evil is not ascribed to Allah at all. If Allah allowed something what we perceive to be evil, if it happens in this existence, Allah allowed it to happen for a reason. Allah allowed it to happen and He gave permission for it to happen for a reason and due to some hikmah and due to some wisdom. Is it clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? The second type of idhn of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is idhn Allah al-shar'i, the permission of Allah which is in the religion, which is in the Kitaab At-Sunnah, which is legislated. And we know all of that is what? Good. If Allah commanded an affair or prohibited a certain affair, it is all khair, it's all good. And we know the permission of Allah as far as in His Kitab and in His Sunnah, we know that magic is what, everyone? It's manhiyun an, it's prohibited. So everything in the religion of Allah, what He's given permission for in His religion, all of it is good. All of it. There's nothing in Kitaab As-Sunnah, what Allah commands or what He prohibits, except it is good. And if the servant of Allah observe it, then he will be rewarded. طيب. So that is the permission of Allah. It's the first category, Idhn Allah al-Kawni, and then you have Idhn Allah al-Shar'i, the permission of Allah in this existence, and the permission of Allah in His what? In His what, everyone? What's the second? Shar'i, which is in His what? In the religion. طيب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly said, even though Allah wa ta'ala clarified to us in His book and also in the authentic sunnah that magic is real, however, it does not affect anyone except by His permission. وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِّينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِيش إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. They will not harm anyone except by the permission of Allah. And we have the greatest example of those who Allah loved, who was the messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, and Allah allowed magic to afflict the one who He loved, who was the messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. And we know the messenger of Allah was afflicted with magic in his body and then not in his mind. Because there's a reason why I'm saying that. Because we want to refute the Mu'tazili Khabith, whose name was Adnan Ibrahim al-Misri. And I think he was also Shi'i Rafidi Mu'tazili, who talked about how the magic of Allah, or the magic that affect the message of Allah, and to the point where the wahi of that revelation that was revealed to the message of Allah, that magic had actually what? Affected him in this manner, where it is absolute batil. In which you'll find that Ahl Ilm refuted this nonsense to say that the message of Allah was afflicted with magic in his mind, which will cause some doubt in the person to accept the revelation. That's the reason why Ahl Ilm say that the magic affected his body, and it did not affect his what? The wahi. It did not affect the revelation at all. And the hadith of which we're going to talk about again, I'm going to review it right now. Don't worry, everyone. This is where we left off. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed magic to afflict the message of Allah. The message of Allah was afflicted with magic, as it says clearly of the hadith of the two angels who came. طيب, that tremendous hadith which is the Bukhari, where we talked about, and this is where we left off last class. What did we say, everyone? That the Prophet ﷺ كان يخيل إليه أنه يفعل الشيء وما فعله ولم يفعله. That it was given an illusion to him. Now listen to this. That he would do something. That he would do something and he would not do it. طيب. I told everyone last class that the great Imam, Sheikh Muhammad Aman al-Jami, explained this wording. He said that the message of Allah would stand to do something. Then after that, he would lose the ability to do it. So the magic in actuality, the meaning of it here is that it was affected in his body. He was affected with it in his body. He would get up to stand to do it, then he wouldn't have, or he would be rendered incapable of doing it. That was the meaning of it. When he's explaining this particular wording, this is what we're talking about now. The hadith of Aisha, where it says, on the day where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, that he made dua, and he made dua. He kept invoking Allah and invoking Allah until it said, Anna Allah aftani. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He had revealed to me. That He revealed to me, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent those two angels, which was in it my cure. Which was in it my cure. Aftani fi mastaftaytuhu fi. Ay ajabani fi ma da'awtuhu. He says that my Lord revealed to me. Aftani here means that He answered me of what I supplicated for Him, which was what? To cure me. It says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aftani. Aftani, a person would say, would He give him a fatwa? No. The meaning of it is that Allah answered the Messenger of Allah's supplication. That He answered the Messenger of Allah's supplication. That Allah answered me of what I asked. what happened when the Messenger of Allah had made dua to Allah? Allah sent down what? 2 angels. One angel has sat at his what? At his head, and the other at his what? His feet. Until the angels, like we said, what is wrong? Ma waj'u rajul. Why is this? What is the pain of this man? They said matboob, that someone cast a spell or they did magic upon him. They said وَمَنْ طَبَّهُ قَالَ لَبِيدَ بْنُ الْأَعْصَمِ الْيَهُودي. He says, who? مَنْ طَبَّهُ يعني مَنْ سَحَرَهُ. Who's the one that cast magic or the magic upon him? He said Labid ibn al-A'sam, the Jew who's responsible for the Jahmiyyah. The Jew who's responsible for the Jahmiyyah, that was responsible for the Mu'tazila, and responsible for all the other branches of deviant sects that branched off from them, from the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyya. They go back to Labid ibn al-A'sam. Subhanallah. So the whole isnad of the Jahmiyyah goes back to that man who was accused of doing magic upon the Prophet ﷺ. Rather, he did. So keep in mind, the magic of what was done by a Jew in connection to the deviant sects of Islam, that they all correlate and they're all connected. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Tayyib. Labid ibn al-A'sam, in which the angel said, Labid ibn al-A'sam, the one who did magic upon the Prophet ﷺ. Then we talked about in the narration, I'm not going to mention all of it because we already mentioned it. It says that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ described what type of magic he used. He used a comb and he used drops of hair. Then there was like some type of membrane that was from the date palm, in which was gathered. In some type of way, he mixed it all up, and then it was cast at the bottom of a well. And they said that well was disgusting, and it was repulsive, even at how it looked. So the Prophet ﷺ said that the bottom of the well looked like as if one infused water with henna, till it became red, a reddish, repulsive, uglified color, in which the Prophet ﷺ gave descriptions of what he did to cast this magic upon him. And it said that the bottom of it, once he made it and formed it and threw it at the bottom of the well, it said it looked like the head from the head of the shayateen. The heads from the heads of the shayateen. And how the Prophet ﷺ said how repulsive and how horrific it looked in its appearance. Until Aisha said at the narration, Astakhrajtahu ya Rasulullah, did you remove it, O Messenger of Allah? The Prophet ﷺ said, he says, فَأَمَّا اللَّهُ فَقَدْ شَفَانِي فَأَمَّا رَبِّي فَقَدْ شَفَانِي. As for my Lord, He cured me. There was no need for that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cured the Messenger of Allah without him removing the actual magic that was done upon him, which was put inside of that well. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? As a matter of fact, I'll read it quickly so everyone can hear it. It says, excuse me, I'm sorry. It says, قال في مشط ومشاطة وجف طلع نخلة ذكر. قال وأين هو؟ قال في بئر ذروان. فأتاها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في ناس من أصحابه فجاء فقال يا عائشة كان ماؤها نقاع الحناء أو كان رؤوس نخلها رؤوس الشياطين. قلت يا رسول الله أفلا استخرجت؟ قال قد عافاني الله فكرهت أن أثور على الناس فيه شرا فأمر بها فدفنت. تابعه أبو أسامة وأبو ضمرة وابن أبي الزناد عن هشام وقال later end of the narration is talking about. He said that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, that he said to our mother Aisha, he was given a description that its water is nuqa'ul hinna. It was like a henna that was infused with something, was mixed. And we know there's another narration that said that the water and the hinna was infused together or mixed together. And he said that the head of its nakhl, meaning of the head of the date palm that was used to put magic. It looked like the head of a shayateen. Until Aisha asked the Messenger of Allah, did you extract it? Did you remove it? He said, as for my Lord, then he has cured me. And I hate that I would arouse or stir up against the people some type of evil. We talked about this last class, why the Messenger of Allah said this. Because during the time in Medina, the Messenger of Allah was amongst them, was the hypocrites. And if the hypocrites found out that the Messenger of Allah could be affected by magic, they would try to what? Use it. That's the reason why he didn't say anything. Is it clear what I'm saying? That they found out that he was affected by magic, because we know in this particular narration who used the magic, everyone? A Jew. There was hypocrites in Al-Medina. And if the Messenger of Allah would have broadcasted and announced to the people what happened that took place, it would have put a thought inside of the munafiqeen's mind and the hypocrite's mind. He got affected by magic? Let's try it. You understand? And I'm going to read what the Shurrah said in this last part. This is exactly what I said. This is what he says. He says, أن أثور على الناس فيه شرا يعني من تذكير المنافقين السحر وتعلمه ونحو ذلك فيؤذون المؤمنين. He says, for verily if he would have announced it, then it would maybe have reminded the hypocrites about magic. They would try to learn it, and as a result of it, they would try to harm the believers by using it. So the Messenger of Allah remained quiet, did not say or speak about it for the maslaha, for the benefit of what they call dara'ul mafasid muqaddamatun. Dara'ul mafasid muqaddamun ala ish jalb al masalih. Due to the qa'idah or the principle, everyone, that repelling a harm or keeping a harm away takes precedence over what? Over attaining some type of good. Is it clear what I'm saying? The qa'idah, which is known, dara'ul mafasid ish muqaddamun ala jalbi ish al masalih. Repelling evil and keeping it away takes precedence over what, everyone? Jalb al masalih, of attaining some type of benefit. Why are you not sitting here today? طيب. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So this is what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ mentioned here in this hadith, in which the great Imam al-Shaykh Abdurrahman ibn Hassan Ali Shaykh inaugurated the whole chapter with. The point of why he mentioned this hadith, or one of the reasons, is to show that magic is real, number one, and that the best and the most righteous of mankind can be tested by it. And the head of all the righteous is who? Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wassalam. Rather, he's Sayyidu waladi Adam. He's the master of the children of Adam, alayhi salatu wassalam. And also the Messenger of Allah was Khalilullah. Yes. The Messenger of Allah was Khalilullah. Yes, he was. And he was also Kalimullah. And he was also Habibullah, alayhi salatu wassalam. As like we talked about before on many occasions, all the characteristics of the prophets and messengers gathered in the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wassalam. Rather, the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wassalam, was given the miracles of all the prophets and the messengers, either something similar to it or better. Keep that in mind. Ibn Kathir and Ibn Dai wa Nihaya has a whole chapter on it, bringing that every miracle of the Prophet ﷺ was a miracle similar to all the prophets from before, of something similar to it or better. And I gave examples of this. The Prophet ﷺ, for example, he was Kalimullah. The Prophet ﷺ was like, Musa was called Kalimullah, right, everyone? Allah spoke to him. The Prophet ﷺ was also Kalimullah. He was also Kalimullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to the Messenger of Allah rather in a manner that was greater than Musa. How? Because the Prophet ﷺ ascended above the seven heavens to where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the outer, and spoke directly to the Messenger of Allah. That's greater than what was given to who? To Musa. Wasn't it not greater or not? The Messenger of Allah ﷺ was given something greater than Musa in regards to his miracle, where the ocean split, and that was tremendous if you read its story. That in itself was astonishing. Messenger of Allah was given something greater than that. The moon or a star split in half. Which one is greater? The moon. That's greater. A star split in half, a moon split in half. And we know that it happened because some of the mushrikun in their books and in their records and their histories recorded the date that they saw the moon split on that night. So no one say that's not real, that was fake, that was a story that never happened. You'll have books in other countries that have written down. Even some of them have utilized that day as a day of shirk. But the point of the matter is they said the reason why they commit certain acts of polytheism because they saw the moon what? Split into two. Split into two. So the message of Allah was the greatest of humanity in regards to what? Being the best of creation, the best of all prophets. And despite of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed his Khalilullah, wa Kalimullah, still to be tested with magic. So that shows that it's not a punishment in certain cases if one is tested with certain things. And magic is tremendous, as a tremendous affair that one would be tested by. Isn't it not? It's tremendous. Taib. So now if we get to the chapter, we talked about, after that hadith, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in his book, the ayat we already just spoke about. Allah ta'ala says in his book, I don't think they put it in some of your books, the one they didn't put the whole ayat, it's just one ayat. That indeed they knew, they had knowledge, full awareness, that whoever purchases magic, they will have no portion in the hereafter. The ayah was revealed, speaking about who, everyone? The Jews. It was about the Yahud. And like we said, from the characteristics of the Yahud is that they used to partake in magic. Heavily partake in magic. They used to deeply partake in magic. Also from the Christians, we'll talk about that too. Taib. If you notice in the book, as it says, Allah Ta'ala talks about, verily those who purchase it, verily they will have no portion in the hereafter. Let's now talk about the first part of the ayat. The first part of the ayat is what, everyone? What if you look at your book in the Mus'haf, and I want everyone, if they can, after the class, to look at all the ayats, because this ayat is about almost a page long. No, I'll say half a page. Where it says, وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ. So the story was talking about, firstly, our prophet, from the prophets of the great prophets, is Sulaiman ibn Dawood. عَلَيْهِ وَعَلَى نَبِيِّنَا أَفْضَلَ الصَّلَاةِ وَأَتَمُّ التَّسْلِيمِ. It was talking about Sulaiman. If you look to the tafsir of it, there's different stories of what they say. What was this concerning? What was the story speaking about? You'll find during the time of Sulaiman, they say that one of the meanings of the ayah is, for example, that Sulaiman, that during his time, that the shayateen, that he had some type, Sulaiman had some of revelation which were written in certain books, and the shayateen, and he had it under his throne. That was one tafsir. Don't write this down. Don't write it down. That he wrote of what was revelation. He had a writer, his name was Al-Sif. That was one tafsir. Al-Sif, but a sad. Al-Sif. They used to write the wahi. At any rate, it was put under the chair of Sulaiman. The shayateen took it out, and they wrote within the lines of the revelation, they mixed it with magic and sorcery and spells and things of kufr and disbelief. Then it was put back. There, after Sulaiman died, the people, the shayateen had inspired the people to what? Dig up the book. Until when they read it, they thought that what? Sulaiman was involved with what? Magic. So that's the reason why it says clearly in the ayah, وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانَ وَلَكِنْ إِيش الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا. Sulaiman didn't disbelieve. However, who? The shayateen disbelieved. That's one tafsir. There's others. That's one story. There's a lot of them. What Ibn Kathir mentions, it's kind of long. Some of them say that Sulaiman seen the people practicing magic, of what the devils or the shayateen spread amongst the people. These satanic practices of magic that was spread and circulated amongst the people in books, in form of books and literature. Sulaiman went out to the people and gathered all of them. That's another tafsir, where he gathered all of them, gathered all the books or the inscriptions of spells or what have you, and he buried them under his what? His throne. And he hid them from the people. Until when he died, what happened? They seen and the shayateen said, look, under the books, under his what? Throne. They found the books of all the what? Sorcery and magic, and they thought that Sulaiman, this is what he was hiding. Or this is what he was involved in secret. They thought he was what? Involved in what? Magic. So that is a reason they started now insulting him, cursing him, and accusing him of what? Practicing magic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what? Freed them from that tuhma, from that accusation. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Sulaiman did not disbelieve, however what? The shayateen disbelieved. So whether or not it was at that one or another, the point of the matter is, there's others too, and I don't have time to talk about. I'm sorry. Amir, I forgot. Amir? In the office, or do you want the Amir out here to call it? You want to call it? You want to? Tafadhal. The point of the matter is, everyone, is that we know that Sulaiman did not disbelieve. However, who disbelieved? The shayateen. So there's a lot of stories. If you go back to tafsir, it's kind of long, but that's in summary. So we'll just wait, hold on for the adhan. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Shara la ilaha illallah. Exactly. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آتي محمدا والصيلة والفضيلة وبعث مقام محمود الذي وعدته. طيب. So we said, Ya Ma'ashar al-Ikhwa, in regards to this ayat, there was a lot of different aqwal. It's kind of long. But that is from one of the statements that was mentioned, that accusation that were made by the people who accused Sulaiman of disbelief by being involved in magic or partaking in magic. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala freed him from this accusation, that he was not involved in magic and is not what the people thought of him falling into kufr, as you'll find. Even some of the Yahud that they mentioned in their books about Sulaiman falling into kufr. And you'll find that even in the Bible, certain places in the Bible, you'll find that them speaking ill about the prophets and them committing major acts of sins and debauchery and different types of filthy acts of even falling into consumption of intoxicants and all the different types of false narrations that they speak of their prophets in this manner, which is what? Absolute false. And which you'll find that Sulaiman, from their maqalat or their statements, is that he disbelieved. Did Sulaiman disbelieve? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, he did not disbelieve, however the shayateen did. So if you look to the ayah, it says, and what was revealed to the Malakain. And I think it's in your books. I think they just have the ayah. It's not all of the ayah. That what was revealed to the two angels who's Harut wa Marut. We'll talk about that a little bit later because that needs some details. Because some of Ahl-Ilm says that how can two angels teach magic? How can they teach it? And some of them say of what they did possess, however, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them as a test and a trial for the people, where they gave the warning before they actually taught them that. From the children of Bani Israel. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about that when it comes, inshallah. The thing that we know, and even Shaykh Abdurrahman al-Sa'di, if you look in his tafsir, he said they did have knowledge of magic, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent them as a test and a trial for the people before they gave them the warning. Do not learn this. It's kufr, it's disbelief, and that magic is something that is what? It's something tremendously evil. And it's in the lowest levels of disbelief and kufr. And the magnitude of it is tremendous with Allah ta'ala. As a test and a trial for them, they gave them the warning, and they advised them, and they still wanted to what? Learn it, despite of their advice to them not to learn it. So that is the reason why it says clearly in the ayah, the angel said to them, إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ فِتْنَةً فَلَا تَكْفُرْ. Verily we'll trial and a test for you. Do not fall into disbelief. You'll find that Shaykh Abdurrahman al-Sa'di that he took that mawqif and that position in regards to this ayah for those two angels, whose name was Harut wa Marut. And I'll talk about that in more detail, inshallah, when it comes. The most important thing is to let you know that the angels clearly said that learning magic and also practicing it, or being the practitioner of it, all of it is disbelief. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Not only just practicing it, learning it. Learning all the spells, learning all the different weird types of speech and methods, and all the different types of rituals. All those affairs are highly prohibited. Or, for example, learning types of formulas, or trying to cast a spell, or blowing on knots, as we talked about last class. That is from the ways and the practices of what? Of magic, where people tie knots and they blow on it. They'll blow on it. Does that happen? Especially in the islands where they practice voodoo. Tying things, or hurting, or piercing something, or tying it in a knot, blowing on it. All of it is at the lowest levels of kufr and disbelief. And we'll talk about, inshallah, there's not a land that is heavily involved in magic except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends a severe punishment upon that land. As you'll find that is in history. There's not a land where you'll find that people practice magic except you'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends a tremendous punishment upon them. Whether it be a storm, an earthquake, hurricane, you name it. Where it totally decimates their what? Their people. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So magic is something that is what? Very wicked. And that's the reason why you'll find as a result of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends punishment upon people as a result of them practicing it. So we say in this regard, the ayah is clear. What happened with the angels, who was Harut or Marut, there was a test, and he told the people clearly, do not learn this magic or you're going to fall into kufr. طيب, as it says in the last part of the ayah, Allah Ta'ala says that those who have purchased it, and keep in mind that we're still talking about the Jews. During the time of Sulaiman, and during the time of these people, it was all concerning the Yahud, the Jews. And of what we're going to talk about in the other ayats, what happened with Bani Israel during the time of Musa. Because that was during the time of Fir'aun, and during the time of Fir'aun, when the sorcerers of the magic, when they came with a magic that was illusionary. Their magic was not from the shayateen. Their magic was takhyili. It was illusionary. It was an illusion. And that's another magic which we'll talk about. There's other types of magic, and from them which is called takhyili, illusionary magic, where it deceives the eye, where it's not real. Meaning behind it is something that is what? Tricking the eye, or fooling the eye, or deceiving it. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? And you'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about that was the type of magic where the time of Fir'aun, where he commanded those practitioners of magic from those sorcerers and those musha'wada, those they call the jugglers, rather we'll say the magicians or the magicians here, or the sorcerers, that the sorcerers here, that they use this type of magic. That the magic that they used was illusionary, what they call takhyili. That was their type of magic. And even Allah Himself said that the type of magic that they utilized, it was tremendous. And Allah Ta'ala says, وَسَحَرُوا أَعْيُنَ النَّاسِ فَاسْتَرْهَبُوهُمْ وَجَاءُوا بِسِحْرٍ عَظِيمٍ. So when he came during the time of the Eid, Yawm al-Zina, because that was the meaning of Zina here, meaning Yawm al-Eid. It was the day of the Eid. That on the day Yawm al-Zina, as when they came, and we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book about the type of magic in which the sorcerers used, that was illusionary, because it says Saharu a'yun an-nas, that they use magic that deceived the eyes of the people. And they came with tremendous magic. There's another ayah which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book in Surah Taha, يُخَيَّلُ إِلَيْهِ أَنَّهَا تَسْعَى. It was given the illusion to Musa that the actual stick of what they used, that it was moving like a snake. Is it clear what I'm saying? That it was takhyili. You notice the verb that was used, يُخَيَّلُ إِلَيْهِ. Where it comes from the word takhyil. Takhyil means illusionary. It was an illusion. So, what they utilized, the type of magic that the Sahara, Fir'aun, that they used, was what, everyone? It was what they call takhyili. That was the magic that they used. Is it permissible to use this magic? We say absolutely not. It doesn't matter whether it's from the use of the shayateen. It does not matter whether you try to form a concoction of liquid, or that you blow on a knot, or what you write on the wall of a spell, or whether you use blood to write on the wall, or write in some type of amulet or necklace or charm, or with a magic wand especially, or what have you. All those affairs are prohibited, even if it's takhyili, even if it's an illusion. All of it is something that is what? Something that is highly prohibited. And it's in the most deepest forms of what? Of disbelief. Even if it's not real and it's illusionary. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So that is in regards to this ayah. In regards to what happened with Sulaiman, in which also the other ayats in which we're going to talk about, in which the shayateen descend upon, meaning these type of people also. Especially those who use magic by the way of the shayateen to harm certain people. That they also are involved in using the shaitan, and the shaitan also inspires them to keep doing it. And we'll talk about all this in a minute, inshallah. It's going to get more and more in deep as I talk about the more details that's going to come. طيب. Let's get to the other ayats. There were some other things I wanted to talk about numerology today, but I also wanted to talk about something pertaining to the Ouija board. But I'll talk about that in a little later. Next ayah. I'm sure you guys, I hope no one in this room loses the Ouija board. طيب. Next part reason ayah. Read it for me, Sabir. The ayah which is after the ayah, Sulaiman, Surah Al-Baqarah, speaking about Sulaiman. That they believed in Jibt, in the Taghut. They believed in Jibt, or the magic. You don't know your place. You don't have his place today. Jayyid. Keep reading. The hadith in the chapter. Sallallahu Before we get into this, we talked about in the beginning of the class that there's a difference between when a person commits an act, especially if he's partaking or participating in magic. Notice I said at the beginning of the lecture, or the beginning of the class, the beginning of the class, how a person can be qutila riddatan or qutila haddan. First and foremost, I want to remove the ambiguity that Islam is a religion of vigilantism. There is no vigilantism in Islam whatsoever, right everyone? There's no vigilantism in Islam. One cannot take the authorities into his own hands or the law in his own hands. Is that clear or is that not clear? In Islam, there is no vigilantism. It does not exist. Vigilantism in Islam is called kharijiyah. That's what it's called. Vigilantism, if you want to translate it in Arabic, it's called kharijiyah. It's called the ideologies of the Khawarij. They are the ones who are vigilantes. They're the ones who take their own their own laws into the land until they wreak havoc upon society. So I want to make that clear. So what I'm going to speak about is only from the power and the jurisdiction of who, everyone? The hukam, the religious leader of the leader of the country who rules the country. That's it. No more, no less. So that's what I'm talking about. I wanted to lay down an introduction before I give the details. Is it clear what I'm saying now so far? Tayyib. So we know that if a person is practicing magic in Islam, that a person, if he does this, he falls into it, we know that the had is what, everyone? He's killed. Tayyib. Does the common folk do it or does the leader do it? The ruler. Because that's from the jurisdiction of the authorities to investigate and see whether or not the person deserves this punishment. So I want to make that clear. In case the FBI is listening, we do not believe in vigilantism. Rather, we call against it. There's no such thing as vigilantism in Islam. But we're generally learning in Islam where these type of powers are in the hands of the ruler, if there was a Muslim ruler in the country. I mean, if we were in a Muslim country, even though we believe there is still a Muslim ruler. I don't want nobody to think they make takfir of the rulers. But anyway, however, the general hukam in Islam is if a person practices magic, whatever one, he can either be killed riddatan or he can be killed haddan. Is there a difference between the two wording that I said? He could be either killed out of apostation or he could be killed out of it being an exemplary punishment from Islam. Is there a difference? Huh? Who wants to answer? What's the difference? Let me hear from Umar. Fadl. I'm looking for something more specific, but that you had 70% of the answer. All you got to do is just say one word. He's still considered what? J. A person who's killed out of apostation, that person is deemed to be what? He died as a disbeliever, right, everyone? A person that's killed out of the exemplary punishment being established upon him, he's still considered what? Muslim. That's the difference between the two statements. Yuqtal riddatan or yuqtal haddan. He's either killed out of apostation or killed out of what? Out of exemplary punishment being established upon him, which is still considered him to be what? Or her to be what? Muslim. So that's the reason why. You'll find that they say that the person that uses magic to harm people, and if it reaches the authorities, and if it reaches the leader or the ruler, it reaches the ruler and he investigates and finds that this person is doing this, he would be killed out of apostation, especially if he uses the type of magic that is utilized by the way of the shayateen. Is it clear what I'm saying? If it's utilized by the way of the shayateen and it's reported to the authorities and to the ruler and it reaches him, and he sets out to establish the exemplary punishment or the had upon this person, and if it reaches him and he goes out, sets and establishes upon him, he'll be killed out of apostation. That's the magic of what, as we said, everyone, of usage of the what? Of the shayateen. Is it clear what I'm saying? Tayyib. let's just say now if he's killed, now he could be killed still if he does what they call an illusionary. However, if he does it and it reaches the authorities, let's just say the type of magic he's using, which is illusionary, it's still what? From the major sins. And we'll talk about the athar of Umar ibn Khattab, which is going to come, inshallah, don't worry, where one of the Sahaba has seen a man who was practicing illusionary magic. And he was now showing to the people as if his head was being what? Rolled off his shoulders. And he was bringing himself back to life or whatever. Or it's as if he was killing himself and bringing himself back to life, and it was an illusionary. It was an illusion. So then you'll find that he came to him and he knocked his head off. He was from the authorities. He was from the authorities and he knocked his head clear off. And he said, now put your head back on and bring yourself back to life. He was from the authorities. However, like we said, in this particular case, it was the authorities. And we're going to talk about that, inshallah. So in this regard, we say, Ya ma'ashal ikhwa, even if the person is practicing the second type of magic, which is called takhyili, illusionary, he still could be killed, even though he's still considered what? Muslim. So at any circumstances, both still what? Very dangerous. So if you want to just gather up and make everything easy and concise, just know for sure, just stay away from magic. Whether it be illusionary, whether it be uses of the shayateen, whether you're using concoctants or spells, or writing blood on walls with weird words, or what have you. And all the other filthy, disgusting nonsense that these people do out here. Especially I heard on the West Coast it's on the rise. People are telling me now it's on the rise in West Coast. That people are starting to be heavily involved in magic and witchcraft. It's something that's on the rise. And they wonder why there's so many tremors and earthquakes. And they need to be careful. You understand? Because there's a lot of tremors and earthquakes on California. There's a lot. And magic is going to contribute to those tremors being even more worse. So a major earthquake hits. Taib. So this is what we say, Ya ma'ashal ikhwa, that based upon which one, doesn't matter. The had or the punishment is still a person put to death. As far as tawbah, we'll talk about that later, inshallah. And what we mentioned about these details that's going to come about if the person makes tawbah or not. Is it accepted? Is it removed? The punishment or what have you? We'll discuss that in a later time, inshallah. Taib. If we get to the next athar, if you look at your books, everyone, what does it say? It's still talking about who? The Jews again. So the ayat, which is in Surah Al-Baqarah, was talking about who? The Yahud. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, who did magic upon the Prophet ﷺ? It was a Jew. Taib. Here in this ayat, it's talking about who? The Jews again. That from their ways is that they used to believe in what? Al-Jibt. Taib. Notice itself in the tafsir of the word Jibt. What is the meaning of it, everyone? Sihr. Magic. Taib. Does the word Jibt now, doesn't it have other meanings? It does. The word Jibt has other meanings. Taib. So why was the tafsir, what we say in this particular instance, if you look in your books, the type of tafsir that was used here in this particular statement was what they call tafsir bil mithal, given a tafsir by just giving one example, even though the word has other meanings. Is it clear what I'm saying? That's called what they call it again, tafsirun bil mithal, the tafsir of a word by giving one example of it, even though it has what? Other examples. Is it clear what I'm saying or not? You have it? You writing it down, Musa? Tired today? Taib. So we said that the word Jibt can be magic. The word Jibt can mean other than magic. It can mean also sahir. It could also mean a magician. The word Jibt can mean sihr. It can mean sahir. And it can mean other things. From those other things is what everyone from what we studied from the last chapter. What else can it mean? Soothsayer, fortune teller is comprehensive for all of those meanings. Here in this particular instance, even though the Salaf from them, who's Umar al-Khattab mentioned, he's just giving an example, that's all, no more, no less. The meaning is more comprehensive than that. And the meaning contains more than what was mentioned here. That's what they call in the science of tafsir, tafsirun bil mithal. Giving a tafsir of a word by just giving what? One example of it. Even though there are what? Other meanings to it. Similar to that, the word taghut. What does it say in your books, everyone? What's the meaning of taghut? Qala Umar, al-jibt al-sihr, wa taghut what? Shaitan. Shaitan, is that the meaning of taghut? That's just one example of the word taghut. So that's another example of what, everyone? The meaning of taghut and what we just said. Example, another example of what we just said. Tafsirun bil mithal. Giving a tafsir by giving one example of it. Even though it's comprehensive for what? Other meanings. Is it clear what I'm saying or not? As we know from the other meanings of taghut is what, everyone? Man ubida wa huwa radin. Who is worshipped, but he's pleased with the people worshiping him. That's a taghut. Man ubida wa huwa radin. What's another meaning of taghut? I couldn't hear you. Man yad'u ila ibadati nafsih. Whoever calls to the worship of himself, taghut. Another meaning of taghut. Anyone who claims to have knowledge of the unseen. It's a taghut. Another example of taghut. All these are false deities. Give us the examples. Huh? Who rules by other than what Allah has revealed. It's connected with politics. However, in regards to what? For example, taghut, such as people who call to democracy. You're calling to a taghut who calls to liberalism. You're calling to a taghut. If you're calling to now shuyu'iyah, you're calling to a taghut. If you're calling people to be involved in liberalism, ba'thiyah, which is called, or qawmiyah, or nationalism, whether you want to glorify your people, whether I'm black nationalism, white nationalism, Arab nationalism, all of it is tawaghit. All of it is a taghut that's obligatory upon you to disbelieve it, or else your faith will be invalid. وَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى لَا انْفِصَامَ لَهَا. طيب, whoever disbelieves in a taghut and believes in Allah. Based upon this ayah, if you just look at this book, everyone would just think that the taghut is who? Shaitan. But is that correct? That's not just the meaning of taghut. There's other meanings of taghut. There's another meaning of taghut. Of course, we know belief in democracy is a belief in a taghut. Belief in being a person as being a democratic or Republican. All these affairs are taghutiyah. They're all affairs of the taghut. That is obligatory upon one to stay away from. Tayyib. Other affairs of taghut, such as, for example, the belief in what they call metaphoric meanings, is also a taghut. Metaphoric means what they call majaz. It's also a taghut. Majaz, and which is famous amongst the tongues of the Asha'ira. Or glorifying the aql, we'll talk about inshallah. Giving precedence to the mind over the revelation. This type of way is also taghuti. So we'll talk about that inshallah. As you're in also what they call a ta'wil or tahrif al-fasid. You'll find that Ibn al-Qayyim mentions in his book called al-Sawa'iq al-Mursala. Al-Sawa'iq al-Mursala al-Jahmiyyah al-Mu'attila. He said that the two taghuts that have destroyed the ummah, he said number one is called ta'wil, false interpretation of the ayat in the book of Allah. And he said that he called this taghuti. Notice that he used the word taghut. He called it taghuti. And Ibn al-Qayyim also mentioned in Nuniyah. He mentioned in his poetry. I don't want to get into that right now. Any rate, he called from the taghut that has destroyed this ummah, meaning separated them into different sects, is from them falsely interpreting ayat. And he called it taghuti. He said the first taghut, he called it ta'wil, false interpreting ayat in the book of Allah. And Ibn al-Qayyim called it a taghut. You clear what I'm saying? Was it not clear? طيب, the second taghut that he called him Sawa'iq al-Mursala. He called it majaz, metaphoric meanings. It's also a tawhut. Ibn al-Qayyim called it a tawhut. Is it clear what I'm saying? No, the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mean his hand. You're just taking the literal meaning. You have to take the metaphoric meaning of the ayat. Is it clear what I'm saying? Ibn al-Qayyim called that a tawhut. You have to disbelieve in it. It doesn't exist. It's a tawhut. And we'll talk about how Shaykh al-Islam said that majaz is not, it doesn't exist at all. That he negates it totally. Just a fly. That he negates it totally. Any kitab, in the sunnah, and even in the lugha, even in the Arabic language. He negates all of it. And when I was in Medina, and I would sit with Sheikh Rabi', he came to Medina, visited Medina. This is before he lived in Medina. He was in Mecca still. And when he came to Medina, it was an election. Somebody asked the same exact question. And he said the exact same answer I'm saying now. He said, you'll find that Ibn al-Qayyim, Shaykh al-Islam, negates. There's no majaz. It doesn't exist. It not in kitab, not in the sunnah, not even in the lugha. It doesn't exist. It was something that was made by the Greeks, the polytheistic, most filthiest people of what? Of idolatry. They came up with this nonsense to say that language that it breaks down to haqiqah wa majaz. That was something that was not known during the past. Everyone knew based upon how you use words in a sentence, what you intended, based upon the context. For example, if I said to you right now, so-and-so is a lion in this, for example, and let's just talk about war. As a matter of fact, I don't want to use war. I don't want people to think. If you're playing sports right now, right, everyone? If you're playing sports, I think that everybody can relate to this. Man, so-and-so is a beast on the basketball game. He was a beast. What do you understand from the context? That he's very skillful. No, he went wild like a beast. What do you understand? He's very good. He's prolific in what he does. He does it very well. It's understood by the context how I use it. No, the people in Majaz say, no. See, this is the metaphoric meaning here. Because really, in reality, he's not a what? He's not a beast. You understand? Based upon the context of everything, when you hear it, you understood what's intended. Once you put it in the context, it's understood. So-and-so is a beast in the battlefield. So-and-so, man, he's just a ferocious lion when he plays basketball. What does that mean? You saying that he's what? He's skilled. He's prolific in what he does. Right or wrong? That's the reason why he said that all this is absolute nonsense. The point of the matter is, brothers, all of these are examples of the word tawhut. Majaz, ta'wil, democracy, nationalism, shuyu'iyya, liberalism, communism, nationalism, all these different types of affairs are all tawaghit that you have to disbelieve in order for your iman to be valid with Allah. Rather, you'll find Allah gives precedence to disbelief in the tawaghut over belief in Him first. In the ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ. Whoever disbelieves in the taghut, then believes in Allah. To let you know how important it is to disbelieve in all of these tawaghit. Every single last one I just mentioned. And there's more than that. But the head of all of these tawaghit is what? Shaitan. Is it clear? So if you worship shaitan, know for sure you're worshiping the taghut. You understand? So those Muslims out there that so-called say it's justifiable to worship shaitan, that means you have believed in the taghut and disbelieved in Allah. Is it clear? Jayyid. So that is just what they call here in this particular ayah, tafsir bil mithal. Given tafsir by what, everyone? By example. Does that mean that that is just specified to this one meaning, or is restricted to this one meaning? Here, is it written in your book? Kashif? Does this here, Tawhud, mean that the meaning of Tawhud is a shaitan and that's it? Or does the word Tawhud have more meanings than what was mentioned here? This Kashif. Huh? Huh? Jayyid, that's all I wanted to hear. It has more meanings. So that's what you call tafsir, what? Bil mithal. Also, we're going to talk about Tawheed also means Kuhan. I'm going to go get to the tafsir of all this. All this is very interesting. I wanted to talk about numerology and voodoo today and show how they are all satanic practices and they all kufr, inshallah. But I think that will come up, especially due to the fact that I think Halloween is coming soon. Was it in October? What date is it in October? The 31st? Alhamdulillah, see how Allah preordains affairs. I'm talking about magic, and Halloween is the next kuffed out holiday that these people will what? Practice. That's crazy. Thought we'll stop here, inshallah. Any questions about the lesson? Fadl. In its origin, is if you just light candles in your house, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if there's a ritual along with it, that's the problem. Like celebrating one's birthday, that's a ritual. A lot of people don't know when you put a candle on top of a cake and blow it out, that's a ritual. That's a ritual. I'm sorry. Just give me 1 second, Hakeem. If you look to the origin of why people used to blow out the candles on their birthday, look to the history of it. Why they used to do it. They used to do it because it was something dealing with the unseen devils. Or what they would call on, and they would utilize it by the way of lighting candles on a person when they were so-called born or the day they were born. And then upon those summoning of those particular unseen devils or whatever, they would come to the candle, they would blow it out like that on the birthday cake. So all of it was satanic practices. All of it. Now, if you light a candle doing it in that way, that's what we're talking about here. But if you're just lighting candles just to turn on some lights or just to, for example, make the aroma of the room more dim or more, some people use it for romantic affairs. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that, inshallah. I don't see no. If things make they call the ambiance of the room more nice. But at any rate, those type of candles are those ways. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a ritual. Say it again. What were you lighting the candle for, though? If you're taking the candle, you're taking a lantern. If you're using it for a light, we talked about this last class. If you're using it just for a light, and so you can see what you're doing of doing certain work that has to be done, that's something different. Then after you finish, you blow it out and that's done. The problem is if you take it and just sit it there, as if it's something special about it, that's when the prohibition kicks in. But just carrying it in there just to have light so you can see what you're doing, there's nothing wrong with that. Fadl Abdul Hakim. No, he's Suhail. Suhail asked me that twice. Hypnotism does fall. I'm going to talk about that. It does fall. And it's prohibited to use hypnotism. It's prohibited. I'll talk about that later, inshallah. He asked me that a couple of lessons ago. That's why I said Suhail. What's up, Suhail? Say it again. I can't hear. It depends on what are you doing. Yes, your intention to do some type of. Are you trying to do some hand trick? You mean? Card tricks? Or you mean, for example, like they take cards and they say take one out, put it back, and then they mix it up, and then they find the card that you put in there. It's still the same thing. Stay away from it. What's the point of it, though? Was it just entertainment? No, it's still magic. Fadl. Stay away from that. Say it again. Say it again. It's not prohibited to necessarily stay in the house, but just no, you don't necessarily have to stay in the house. But if you want to take protection or refuge from their evil, and if you want to just say stay in the house, stay in the house. But to say it's prohibited to go out the house where people are doing that, you can't say that. Just don't partake in what they're doing. That's all. Ahmed. What's the reason why are you tasting your blood? As far as in regards to tasting one's blood, whether it be whether a person is utilizing for magic or not, just don't do it. Taste your own blood. And also concoctants. There's another one we're going to talk about. It's called takhyili, illusionary. That's all the first category. All first category. Talismans, amulets, spells, written spells, and certain forms of languages that one doesn't understand. It's not recognizable. Nobody knows what it means. Weird words, weird type of words that use in certain ways and orders and patterns. It's just extremely strange. All that's part of the first category. Father Ahmed. I'll talk to you about that later. We'll stick to the class last. If there's any more thing left. Allah knows best. I think that's all connected with the shayateen. To say that they'd use in magic, Allahu Alam, but it is definitely a form of usage of the shayateen, the jinn. Speaking in tongues. It's something that's pertaining to the jinn, the shayateen. Definitely. There's nothing that Isa you'll find that practice that if you start, you'll find that a lot of these affairs are connected with Sufism. Especially, for example, you find that Muslims, they rock back and forth like this. You're not supposed to do that. We'll talk about that stuff the Sufis do. They got it from the Yahud. They got it from the Jews. They rock back and forth. You read the Quran. That's from the Yahud. You'll find it it's from the Jews. Yes, that's true. Right. Also, that type of practice, you'll find that the Sufis do that. The Sufis that they do that, especially those who are heavily engrossed in Sufism, that they do this. They'll start making Allah, Allah, Allah. Now compare it to the Christians. What do? They keep saying Jesus, 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 Jesus. Then they start and they start speaking this weird language. You understand? It's the same thing. You understand? Shayateen. All of it shayateen uses shayateen, jinn. All of it. Clear what I'm saying, Musa? Anything else we can wrap up because we can pray, brothers? But I've seen brothers do this. Brothers, you probably don't know that you shouldn't do that. You read the Quran or you're just rocking. Don't do that. Okay? All right? That's something that the Yahud, if you notice that the Yahud, especially from the Yahud, they do that. You never seen them do that before? When they read their Talmud, or they be rocking back and forth like this. They do it at the wall. Exactly. They rock it back and forth. And I've seen Muslims, they'll do that, read the Quran, and they'll rock back and forth. Like, don't do that. You understand? Stay away from doing that. طيب إن شاء الله. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. I'm glad you told me too. Sister?